Hello everyone, and welcome back to another WARNO unit tier list, as today we're gonna go over fighters again. As the last tier list of them is over a year ago, we got a lot of new fighters since then, and balance has changed. Plus we back then didn't use the stats cards and so on the screen, so it makes sense to update that anyway. And thanks for all the support over that year as well, guys. A lot of new members here, channel members as well, and yeah, thanks to those guys giving in the extra support. Thanks to all of you, though. If you want to see more of these videos, leave a like, leave a subscription down below, and let's get into the action here with the British fighters. As we start with the Harrier, and one thing that is not on the unit stats cards in WARNO, that is pretty important for fighters, is their turn radius, and we come here right in with the Harrier. And it makes sense to mention this here because the Harrier has little going for it. It is the slowest of all the fighters here. It has a pretty mediocre missile. It doesn't have it in a shotgun configuration, meaning it has only one weapon slot, so it can only fire those one after another out of that weapon slot. And the only thing that the Harrier has going for it is numbers, which got buffed a bit lately. And it has the advantage of the turn radius. The turn radius of the Harrier is only 950 meters, and that is a bit of a saving grace. The price also obviously great, it's the cheapest here as well, but yeah, it's still not a good unit to chase down enemy planes. It's a pretty good helicopter hunter though, and it can turn away from the enemy's AA quite quickly after getting that shot on to a helicopter. It's due to its relatively low speed, still a long time in the enemy fire range though. So in the end, I still think this is only a C kind of plane. I don't think the Harrier is great, but the turn radius does keep it out of D. Like, turn radius and the slight speed buff it got somewhere in the last year puts it into C tier here. Tornado, on the other side, just got a buff lately as well. And that buff was the range buff to the Skyflash Super Temp, now going to 8,475 meters. And the only plane with the Skyflash Super Temp, though the AM7 M's on the other side got it as well. And yeah, that puts the Tornado, in my eyes, into a hot A-tier spot. The Tornado has a couple of things going for it. First, it has a lot of missiles. Then it also has good ECM. 30 ECM is really nice as well. And then it has that nice mix of really solid long range and some short range missiles. Neither the Super Temp nor the AM9L have the highest accuracy of their class. The turn rate of it is good as well though. Tornado turns on 1,300 meters, which is pretty decent for a fast fighter. So in general, a really well-balanced, high modern jet. And that's why I say it's a good A-tier plane. Like, it's a really fantastic one. Does all the jobs that you need from a fighter. The Mauser cannon is a bit low on ammo, but does deal decent damage. So killing off a helicopter is quite doable as well. And all of that, I think, put the Tornado here into A-tier. Then we come to the French planes, or the planes in French service, and there we start with the Crusaders, as they are the cheapest. And we start with the Crusader AA1. And that one is really cheap. Issue of it is only 8 hit points. That's an issue with the Harrier as well. You get one tapped by the 9 damage missiles, the 9 damage ground-based AA, or 2 small 4 damage missiles or so. And that's for sure a big weakness, especially the one-shot capabilities that some units have against you. 10% ECM, not that great. It's a bit faster than the Harrier, though it also has pretty bad missiles. The Magic R550s are not great. The gun also has an ammo problem. And all of that, I would say, put the Crusader behind that. Plus, the Crusader has a terrible turn rate. It's a bit faster than the Harrier, yes, but it has a 1,550 meter turn radius. That's the same as an F-15 or MiG-31. And that's a problem, because this thing needs to be a bit more agile to actually do its job, and it absolutely isn't that. And that really makes it struggle. It can do decent against helicopters, and that's what it keeps it out here, because for 80 points it is a really cost-efficient helicopter hunter. Even mid-tier helicopters, if you kill them, you get at least even, or get a bit of extra out of there. So that makes the Crusader decent, or okay, but yeah, its capabilities against other jets is terrible, and it can't win dogfights there either. Then we have the AA-2, and the AA-2 is a pretty different story. The AA-2 has two R-530 missiles, and those missiles are surprisingly good for this kind of platform. They have pretty bad accuracy, only 40%, but they are long range, they have 6 damage, and they're fire and forget, meaning you shoot them at 7,000 meters, and then you just get the hell out of dodge and fly back to your base. And that's a pretty big deal. Like, those missiles really do the job. So I think these planes are actually pretty damn solid. You just fly in there, and if the enemy only has the issue is still you have a long turn radius, so you still will have a good wait until you turn back. But if the enemy only has short range missiles, then only like shotgun fighters or so, then you can shoot a lot of missiles at them and get out. And if you buy 3 or so of these Crusaders at once, then that's like 6 missiles flying into the enemy face, and sure, only 40% accuracy with ECM and so on, the chances are not high, but if you get enough missiles out there, and you can get that with this cheap price, you will hit eventually, and I think that makes the F8P Crusader actually kinda okay. I still would only go with low B tier here, but I actually think it's okay, pretty fine little plane. Cost efficiency wise, it does the job. Card efficiency wise, it still isn't amazing and falls off eventually. But yeah, with the 2 missiles there, it's okay. Then we have the Mirage 3E. That combines the pretty bad missiles of the 2 planes we talked about before. Has the same speed, and has, unfortunately, also the same issue of 8 hit points. And that is a big issue for the Mirage 3E. If it would have better hit points, if it would have 10 hit points, the Mirage 3E would be a lot better. But it also has the high turn radius, and all of that means that I still would put this as a high C tier plane. Like, the extra price, not really worth it for better gun and the mix of both missiles. It was once one of the best planes in the game. That was when it had 10 hit points and you could just spam them out like nothing, but the 8 hit points really did hit this one hard. Being one-shotted by cubes and books with 10 hit points, 10% ECM and 8 hit points is really rough. So this plane has fallen off a lot. It's still cheap. That's what keeps it out of falling off completely. Like, you can still saturate the airspace with them and maybe use some better planes behind it. But in general, not the most amazing one. Then we have the Mirage F1C 200. That one gets a slightly better long-range missile accuracy-wise, so it is actually guided, so that's actually kind of a nerf compared to the Fire and Forget missile that we just saw, though it has range scaling with that, and it has 2 of them. So the 2 of them is the one big buff, and then the other major buff is the 10 hit points and 20% ECM. In general, still in my eyes, only a C tier plane. Was a good bit better in the past as well, got price nerfed significantly, and ever since is not the greatest here anymore. And the French 5th Blindé, in my eyes, heavily gets carried by Rolands nowadays. Like, those keep the sky clean anyway, so you don't really need your fighters if you would need them. Like, they still can come in to shoot on helicopters and just be annoying and keep the enemy off your Jaguars, but if you would need your fighters, you would be in a rough spot there with the Mirage 3E and Mirage F1C 200 currently. Then we have the Mirage 2000 CRDI, and that gets a slightly better Magic with better accuracy. That's actually what the F1C actually gets as well. The accuracy there, I did miss that. And you also go up to 5 damage, so that's actually a decent buff here as well. But yeah, in general, still 200 points, that's still not The speed of the F1C is also pretty nice with 1325 kmh. Mirage 2000, a bit slower, has great air optics, so it can spot enemy planes pretty well, and it goes up to 30% ECM, and it gets a better accuracy and longer range variant of the 530, the 530D, and that's nice improvements. Like the 10% ECM go a long way. The better percent accuracy, range and accuracy on the long range missile go a long way as well. I think that's absolutely worth 30 points with the better air optics as well. I think that makes it just barely into low B tier though, because it's still, compared to other mid tier planes, like the 30% ECM is nice, but the rest really kind of isn't great. Like 50% ACM on the long range missile and not having the same range as the tornadoes, and not getting the bump up that the Super Temp got. That's still a bit rough. The Majiks are still below AM9Ms and so on. And yeah, you're okay in speed and so on, but it doesn't quite cut it. That gets us to American built, or American designed planes at least. And then we start with a Dutch plane, and that is the NF5A. This is a really weird, cheap little fighter as well, as it gets really old AM9P air-to-air missile. At least in WARNO they can fire all aspect. Historically seen, they wouldn't be able to do that, but they still do little damage. Accuracy is pretty mid, so that's not great there. They have okay range, surprisingly, against aircraft with 4250. The plane itself is pretty slow, has pretty bad turn times, and it is actually pretty expensive for that. Like compared to the Mirage 3E, I actually don't think this is great. It has the better ECM and it has the 10 hit points. Like this is, like it can soak damage better than the Mirage 3E, but it has way worse missiles. So yeah, both are not great planes. I would say it's around the same spectrum. I would even maybe put the Harrier above both of these currently, just with how cheap it is and with the good agility. So yeah, all of these are pretty mediocre planes. It is usable. That's the thing with all of these fighters. Yeah, we see them all still being used, which keeps them out of D tier. Like none of these fighters is so terrible that you never ever see them used, which is pretty surprising how you didn't make that happen. Like in any other category, you usually have some that never show up. It's kind of because fighters are pretty essential, but also they are all just okay enough here in C tier, but they make the divisions weaker for sure. And the same goes with the F5A here. It's good with the ground air defense that you get in 4E. Like you can bait enemy fighters into it, and it is still decently enough at the killing helicopters. But the turn time, and all of that, it's still not great. The cheap price kind of trying to save it. Then we come to the next plane, and that one goes even faster, and it has surprisingly AM9Ls. AM9Ls have higher damage and higher accuracy than the AM9P, have low range, but the F104 Starfighter, it gets those, and that's a saving grace, because yes, it's a pretty fast plane, 1200 kmh is pretty nice, but it has the worst turn radius out of all planes, 1625 meters, even 75 meters extra to the high turn radius of other planes, 1550. So the 1625 there is a bit unfortunate, and it really is only there to dart in and hunt either enemy bombers with its higher speed, or just go for head-ons with a couple of friends. It has the 8 hit point issue, it has the 10 ACM issue. The high speed and the AM9L, I think, make it kind of okay though, because the AM9L at least means that this thing hits often enough, similar to the Harrier, that it actually is somewhat scary, and with its high speed, it can just chase down enemy bombers and so on decent enough, or just run in there and get into a head-on with something. And that, in my eyes, kind of saves the F104. You just don't want to end up in a dogfight because it's the weakest out of all planes there. That brings us to the Phantom family. And here we're going to start with the American one. And that's the F4E Phantom 2. And that one just got a really nice glow up, because the Sparrow got the range buff similar to the Super Temp lately, and it is the plane that carries the most Sparrows. And the Sparrows were pretty mediocre before that range buff. The plane already was pretty fine there, because it is actually surprisingly cheap. 185 points for a plane that carries 7 missiles. That's 1 missile less than a Tornado. But the quality of the missiles is actually not that much lower. Yes, your short-range missiles are AM9Js. Those are not great. The good thing for it is the Sparrows do 6 damage, the AM9J does 4 damage. If you hit one of the AM9Js and the Sparrows, you still kill a plane with 10 damage. So the combo there does work out, even with the 4 damage missile. And you have just so many Sparrows to flicker at the enemy that you can just hunt down enemy planes forever. 20% ECM, 1100 kmh, not great, not terrible. I think the pure cost efficiency alone with those long range missile capabilities, that just, if you have 2 out of these out circling around and the enemy only has shotgun fighters and wants to send bombers in, they're gonna struggle to break you. They're gonna struggle to touch these, as you just have so many missiles being able to fire at them, and with the better range also getting them out. So I believe the Phantom just got buffed really hard. It didn't get a price nerf. I think it should get a slight price nerf there, as currently it just feels really, really strong. And yeah, that puts the Phantom out here into S tier. Phantom F3. That is the British one. This one doesn't have a gun. It has the better Sidewinder missiles compared to the American one. The lack of the gun is pretty annoying, just to finish off enemy planes or to kill off helicopters. You can't really do this with this one. It has the better Sidewinders with the AM9L, and it has the weaker missile by a lot though. The Skyflash only has 7,000 meters. That's more than 1,000 meters less. Like 1,400 meters nearly less than what the Phantom gets. And that's a big, big nerf for only 10 points difference. Yes, the better Sidewinder is nice, but it's not no gun and weaker long-range missiles level of nice. Rest of the stats are identical. I still believe it's a solid plane. I would put it into high B tier, because it's still pretty cheap for having long-range missiles and the AM9Ls. Like in a head-on fight, it does deal solid damage until the enemy comes out with guns at you. But until then, this one can do decent, and it can do well at hunting down enemy bombers and so on as well. So that one goes here. And then we have the F4F of the Germans. And this one gets dual AM9Ls. And it gets better ECM. 30% ECM. And it got nerfed quite a lot, because when shotgun fighters were first introduced, this thing was completely nuts. 5th Panzer, because of it, was completely nuts, and it had to be nerfed quite heavily. Though now that long-range missiles have stress on miss and reduce the performance of the rest of your planes, I think this actually dropped off quite a bit. I think it could go down to 190, 185 points, and would still be fair. I think it actually dropped off really kind of bit of a cliff, being at low B tier when once being S tier. Like, this thing was pretty mental when it was in its prime, because the shotgun fighters, when they were introduced, and this one having decent missiles and the high ACM, could just fly into enemy long-range fighters and just kill them off, even though they fired maybe one missile and hit you, but then you just fire off your short-range missile quickly and hit them, and they all hit because you didn't get stressed out at all. And now, if a long-range missile hits you whilst you're flying in, you might get stunned and have to turn back before even getting shot off, even if you don't die. And that has nerfed the shotgun fighters quite significantly, leaving this here at the lower end of B tier. The stress on miss has really impacted these guys quite significantly. Now we come to the biggest family, the F-16s here. It's the biggest family together with the MiG-21s, actually. No, the MiG-23s actually are the biggest, so biggest NATO family of planes here. The F-16s, starting with the Belgian one, starting with the AM9P dual wielder, and that one was just as fast as the F4F when it first was introduced. got nerfed a couple of times. And the AIM-9P at 4 damage has the issue that we talked about earlier, that 2 of them with 4 damage don't kill a 10 hit point plane. Its 50% accuracy is somewhat of an issue as well. Though, at least it has a gun, allowing it to kill off helicopters, and it is pretty affordable. As a shotgun fighter, with 20% ECM, doesn't have 30% ECM here, it has the weaker missiles compared to the F4F for 25 points. I think they are somewhat identical in performance, with the F4F, the German one just being a slight bit better. Then we come to the next one. That's another shotgun fighter, another 30% ECM shotgun fighter. It's basically the same as the German one, as F16 and F4 actually have really little difference in WARNO, and especially in these versions, as the air optics and so on, good air optics and so on. And that means that with the turn radius being slightly better for the F16, I think we just gonna put that there. Like this turn radius for 5 points, being a better dogfighter for a plane, it's pretty close. Like stats wise, outside of turn radius, they are identical. But the F16 is the bit more agile plane. Speed wise, they are the same. 1100 kmh. So there you go here. And then we have the last one. It just has more missiles, and that's actually pretty decent on a shotgun fighter. You might miss twice, and then a third, and you need to hit both of the remaining missiles if you fly with 4. Like with how ECM works and how much they can reduce it a good bit below 50%, and then hitting twice with 4 missiles is not really a given. Hitting twice with 6 missiles is quite likely. So for 10 points, being pretty reliable at killing an enemy if you get to shoot at them, that's actually quite nice. And against a couple of helicopters or so, that can be nice as well. So I think the AA2 is the best one of the bunch. Might even push it above the Mirage 2C here. And then we come to the best one in the pack, the F16C AA. And that one got nerfed or buffed in price a good bit. It got nerfed a while ago, went up to 245 points. Now it comes down to 220. And then it got the Sparrow buff on top. And I think that put it into A tier. It still has the issue of only having 4 missiles, but the Sparrow is pretty solid. The AIM-9M it has is fantastic. AIM-9M, 65% accuracy. That is really scary. All of that is a pretty price-efficient bundle. You have the same turn radius as the Tornado. You have only half the missiles, but the first strike power is pretty solid. And I think that makes it a solid A-tier little unit as well. F16C AA2. I would put into higher A-tier now, B-tier nowadays. It is a shotgun fighter with the better AIM-9M. So better accuracy on those missiles, meaning that your chances of winning a head-on are higher than the F16C, F16A. The bit extra accuracy there and the extra range compared to the AIM-9Ls, so that you shoot first and have a higher chance to hit, is pretty big. So I still think this is the best shotgun fighter in the game, but they have dropped off a bit. I would put them in high B tier, but yeah, it does a decent job. Then we come to the F15s, and there we start with the AA2, which is the Sparrow one. And that one was pretty bad before the Sparrow changes. The 40% ECM was nice, but it just couldn't quite kill the enemy, usually. And against Su-27s or so, which had longer range, it struggled. They still have better accuracy on their missile, but the AIM-9M is good. The 40% ECM is fantastic on the F-15, and the high speed is great too. So I would rank this one high B tier. It is still pretty expensive for what it does, and it's not having the greatest of killing powers. And I still like the other one more. This one is still an A-tier fighter, as the MRAM has good accuracy. It has a bit lower range, sure, but it is fire and forget, meaning that you can shoot out 2 MRAMs. It also has the fire flight speed, the MRAM, so it hits the enemy before the Sparrow hits it. Yeah, so the M7 comes in, even though it has more range, comes in later. The long range MRAMs fly fast. really fast over that range. So the F-15C can just shoot out some MRAMs and then get out of dodge. And that's a pretty nice advantage, putting it into low A tier, because the price is still really, really high for it. And it's not the longest range plane in the game. We will come to those on the pack side, which we will start now as we go in with the MiG-21 family. And that one has East German and Polish introduction so far. Starting with the basic one that we got first, and that is the MiG-21 bis AA of the East Germans with only 4 R60Ms and no extra things on top. And that one is a pretty mediocre fighter, as R60Ms are pretty terrible. They have really low range. They have decent accuracy actually on that low range, but also only 4 damage. And then it's 8 hit points, 10% ECM, so it gets shot down quite easily. And then we come to the MiG-21 bis AA2, which is the same as the MiG-21 bis AA2 of the Polish, which on top of the R60Ms also has R13Ms, which have the same range, but 5 damage. And lower accuracy. Lower accuracy for 1 more damage. Issue is that the mix of these two does 9 damage, which is not really a hit point number that exists. So together they need a gun or so to get that 1 extra hit point damage on 10-point hit point planes. So it's not the greatest combo to trade off some accuracy for, which we'll get to the double R60M plane in a second. But the good jump in lethality due to the extra missile is worth 20 points here. It's still a pretty cheap fighter, but it actually can get some kills. The accuracy is still not great, so you still usually need 2 of them. And it only has 2 of the R13Ms, but 6 missiles still nice. So it's not the 3-3 cut, it's a 4-2 cut, meaning that the R13Ms are out, and then you still have to wait a bit till all the R60s are out. And I think that's better on the MiG-21 bis AA3. That one has 2 R60Ms split up into 3 each, meaning that it fires those 6 missiles off a bit faster than the other 2 for the same price, and it has the better accuracy on them. And against 8 hit point planes, it's a bit more lethal thanks to that. Whilst against 10 hit point planes, it can still do it with the gun or the next missile, which comes out a bit faster. So I think it's a bit better. The difference is not massive, but it is there. That's what makes this just that slight bit better. And then we have, as the last one, the MiG-21 bis AA with the R3R. And the R3R has a bit more range, but is radar guided, not fire and forget. So you have to fly straight into the enemy, but that's something you usually do anyways. In general, I would put it behind the double R60M one as well, though, as it's once more the 5-4 damage combination to 9 damage, and it is also low accuracy and not fire and forget. So those are the slight weaknesses here, plus the 4-2, so it doesn't get the missiles off as quickly. So MiG-21's decent planes, but not amazing value currently. And then MiG-23 MLAA. And that costs the same as the MiG-21 bis AA2 that we just talked about, but it just gets 2 more hit points. It is a bit slower, but the extra 2 hit points are pretty big in my eyes. It only has 10% ECM as well. Oh no, and it's not even slower. It's actually the same speed. I messed up there, 1125 kmh. So it's just a good bit better than this one. And I think it's actually a pretty decent shotgun fighter for 145 points. The 10 extra 10 hit points, meaning that it doesn't get one shot out there while still being dirt cheap, is a really nice addition for 79, 157, and 35 that got it with its 6 R60M. So yeah, shotgun loadout of the MiG-23 is actually pretty nice. Then we come to the MF. This one is the one, the MF2, with the R3R. And that is actually quite bad. 15 points extra to have what the MiG-23 gets for free, even losing some missiles, going from 6 missiles to 4 missiles. You get 10% more ECM, which isn't a small jump, but like losing missiles and losing a bit in quality in Myers as well, but paying extra for the ECM, I don't think is worthwhile, and I actually would put this in high seed here. This is, or maybe even slightly lower here. I think the Mirage is actually better. With the Mirage with the high speed, actually, yeah, after considering it, putting it into low B tier here as well. Not the greatest of planes in my eyes, but yeah, can do the job. This one, not so great. And especially because for 5 points more, you get a plane that has the R-23Rs. And those are just way longer range missiles. The same one for the East Germans and the Polish. And the R-23Rs are just a good, solid bit better. It's still not a great long-range missile. 40% accuracy, 5 damage, and together with the R60M, once more the 9 damage issue. But it is better, and I would put them above the MiG-21s here into B tier territory. And then we have one that costs exactly the same, but instead of the R3R, gets the R23R, it gets the R24R, and that's a jump in 1 damage, 5% accuracy, and 775 meter range, plus being the same price. And that's actually pretty amazing. I think that one just jumps into lower 8 here because whilst it's still a 10 ECM hit platform, it actually has a pretty good missile, whilst being pretty damn cheap and having two good long-range missiles, whilst being cheap, is a pretty nice thing to have. And that brings the R23R here. It's still not amazing, 45% accuracy, but I think it's actually pretty damn nice for the price point. And then the MiG-23 MLD, that does the same thing with 10% more ECM for 10 points more, which is a okay trade-off. And then we get the MLD AA2, and that gets the R24MR, which adds 5% more accuracy, and it gets the R73, which are the best missiles on the side of the best infrared short-range missiles on the side of Pact. So this one gets really good missiles, but still being on a MiG-23 MLD. So they're around it somewhere the breakpoint where better missiles on a bad platform start become a liability where you don't want to risk it really, because you want to have the good missiles and so on, and you pay extra for that compared to these. But I still think it's a solid little fighter nonetheless. The R24Rs and R60Ms are okay, and the MLD with the better missiles is actually quite nice. And then MiG-29 family. And there we have a couple as well, where we put all of these over here because they are all stats clones. And we start with the cheaper ones, which with the Polish come as a shotgun fighter. And this one is a pretty good one, as it costs only 210 points. And actually, I might have been wrong. I don't think the F-16 is the best one, because the F-16 only gets 10% more ECM over this, but this one has the good missiles as well, and 20 points for 10% ECM. It's more like 10 to 15 points. I think actually this one might be the best, and kinda helps out Corpus Dovi there. This is a pretty good shotgun fighter. The R-73R, and 3 of them are on each pylon, or in each weapon. So you have 6 of them, 3 on each side. That is really helpful to shoot down enemy planes. And yeah, 210 points is quite nice there. Then the cheaper ones of the Soviet side, that one trades out the R73s for R60Ms for 10 points compared to the others. And it's 4 missiles that got downgraded, whereas the other ones carry 4 short-range missiles as well. 4 R60Ms. That's quite the downgrade in my eyes. I think that's slightly more than 10 points, having that on 4 missiles, so we will see where the others go, but I would put this one still as a decent fighter because it has good R27Rs, which are really long range and good accuracy, long range missiles. The R27R is fantastic. 8,400, 75-meter range, and 55% accuracy. It's really good. It's better than the Super Temp or the Sparrows, in fact. On a pretty cheap platform still, but 20% ECM. But yeah, the R60Ms are a bit of an issue, with the other threes all being the same with R73s, and also the R27Rs, and on these here. And then, yeah, let's go with these three first. I think that's an A tier plane as well, with the slightly better missiles, even above the F-16 here. The MiG-29, pretty good fighter. And then the MiG-29 AA3, 5 points cheaper, gets shorter range missile with the R-27T, but that one is fire and forget. So you can shoot it and then get out of dodge. And that's pretty nice against enemy shotgun fighters against you. And it's also pretty nice when you chase enemy planes and you don't want to chase them over enemy AA. You can shoot the missile and get away immediately. So it's a bit weaker, I would say, in most head-on scenarios and so on than the other one, but it's also 5 points cheaper. I would put it slightly behind it. I still like this plane a lot. I like the fire and forget missiles when I can get you to use them. And there are some nice scenarios where the enemy doesn't really respect them. But yeah, in general, a decent plane, not the most amazing. Then we come to the Su-27S, and that has 4 of these R-27Rs and 6 R-73s. So it has 10 really fantastic missiles. That is a powerhouse. And I think it's an absolute S tier plane still. 260 points. It has 30% ECM, so it has good ECM as well. The issue of this plane is its turn radius, but that's not insanely big either. 1,550 is not crazy. It's a bit slower than F-15, so like that's where the F-15's big advantage lies, together with 10% more ECM, speed, and so on. But the F-15 doesn't have the weapon loadout that this one has. This one can shoot down 3 planes sometimes of the enemies and get out again, and that really makes it scary. If the enemy has an Su-27S out, you are pretty worried. This really makes the 3 divisions that have it a good bit stronger. Su-27S is a fantastic fighter, and then we have the upgraded version of it, the T-10K, and that one is just crazy, because the T-10K gets 1 more weapon slot with R-27Ts, the fire and forget ones, traded in for 4 of the R-73s actually. So those double pylons get replaced by those, meaning that you can dual shoot long range missiles. So you're a shotgun long range plane, which is just crazy, that you get double the hit rate basically on long range of this, plus triple fire on short range. You have 2 less missiles than the other one, but the triple shot and the double shot on long range are still phenomenal. Still making this an absolutely insane plane for 10 points more. Like, this is just crazy. Compared to the F-15C, it loses speed and ECM, but the double tap and even better than the Sparrow long range missile on one of the pylons with the same ammo. Like, yeah, I think that's a good bit better for the same price point. The ECM and speed are nice, but I think it's at least a 10 point, if not a 15 point difference. Like, it's significant. And that brings us to another family of good planes, the MiG-31s. And we start with the MiG-31 AA1, or AA, which has the longest range missiles. That's something that all of these planes have, the R-33. And this is the R-33S on this one, which is fire and forget. It has 40% accuracy, and it means that you can shoot out these 4 on really long range and then just get out of bounds. Then just get out of there. That is pretty annoying. Issue for this plane is it can't hunt down helicopters. That's its only real weakness. It is really fast with 1,325 kmh. So if the enemy only has shotgun fighters, they will never catch it. This shoots this missile, gets home, and eventually it will hit. 8 damage means also you one-shot the light planes, and that is pretty good as well. I think the lack of being able to shoot down helicopters and a bit lack of missiles as well and a chance of hitting means that you are not as reliable as other planes, and I think the Tornado is nice for that, price-wise. But it's still a good plane here, MiG-31B. Then we have the MiG-31 AA1, and that one is pretty crazy as well, as it has a double long-range missile setup as well. The R-33s here are guided and not fire and forget. And they are radar guided so that this thing has to zoom into the enemy. But for 300 points, you still get a lot of killing power against planes on long range before they can really retaliate. As the fire and forget missile that it gets 2 of does 8 damage as well. So if 2 of these missiles hit, enemy is safe dead. And I think that makes it an ST unit as well. The 300 price point is pretty hard to afford sometimes, and it really is a big oof when you have to buy this plane, taking you a bit out. But if you can afford it, then this thing over the length of the game will just get complete sky dominance for you. It's not always super duper reliable in the first couple of engagements maybe, but eventually it will just get the kills for you. And that's the scary part about it. And then the MiG-31 AA2, that one gets R60Ms, short-range missiles. I'm not the biggest fan of that. And not being fire and forget for both of these mean that they also need to fly into the enemy. And with the one that gets double shotgun out on the enemy, and meaning that they stun down the enemy for sure, that's great as well. This one doesn't quite do that, so I still think it's a good plane. I maybe would put it here slightly behind the Eagle. Still an A-tier plane, but not quite as good as the other two, which are really good. And then the Su-15s, where we start with the AA-1, and that one is a weird one as well. It has 3 missiles as well, 2 long-range missiles, 2 short-range missiles. No gun though, unlike the Su-25. And the missiles are not quite as long-range, with the radar missile being a bit on the mid, and the fire and forget one also being step lower than other ones there, maybe. And accuracy being an issue there as well, 10% ECM, though it is quite cheap for that still. And I think that the cheapness of this is still quite nice, which would put it into low A tier for me as well. And then the other one only has the fire and forget long range missiles and the R60s, and then adds a gun on top. But trading the gun for not being able to immediately shotgun out long range missiles, I think is not a great victory here. I still think this is a pretty cost efficient plane, so I would put it into B tier here, but that's where I would leave it. So yeah, here you go. I think NATO Air with the AM7M and the Super Temp buff got back really into the competitiveness, but the Su-27 still dominate for now. And the Phantom, it just can hold up in cost efficiency. That price difference is big there, but in the long game, in 10v10s and so on, it's still hard to keep up with NATO just maybe winning by getting enough F-16s and Phantoms out there eventually. But yeah, in total, maybe a couple slight nerfs there to Su-27s and so on still could come. And yeah, a pretty fine tier list. As I said, I'm happy that we didn't get any D tier here. And the rest of the deck is looking pretty solid as well. So, the rest of the tier list as well. So let me know down below where you would disagree and what you would change. And see you all in the next one. Bye bye.